We don't get praise if blame doesn't exist. We don't get joy if sorrow doesn't exist. We don't get gain if loss doesn't exist. And so rather than use this teaching as a way to grasp for something or to push something else away or to scramble and try really, really hard, the teaching is used to remind us that we're meant to learn how to exist in the middle of it all. We're meant to learn how to exist at the intersection of those 8 worldly winds, or perhaps more appropriate for us tonight, the intersection of our daily lives. Welcome. You are listening to Our Mindful Nature, formerly titled The Mindful Minute. I'm your host, Meryl Arnett. This podcast explores the deep connection between land and self through nature-based meditations and meditative experiences that invite us back into belonging to each other, to our ancestors, to the earth, and to all beings that make up this universe. If you would like to access these meditation practices as standalone audio files, please subscribe to my newsletter at merylarnett.com. It's free, and you'll receive a new mini meditation each week, along with behind-the-scenes content and bonus material for each podcast episode. All right, grab a cup of tea, pop in your headphones, and find a comfy seat. Let's settle in for today's episode. Good evening. Welcome. Thank you guys for joining tonight. I'm glad to be with you. We are at the culmination of our witchy meditation series. And I wanted to kick tonight off this sort of transition from the witch archetype into the really specific meditations that are most applicable to what we're talking about. I want to transition with this little gem, this little nugget I stumbled across when I was reading a handful of years ago. And sometimes you read something and it hits you just right for some reason. It makes sense to you, it resonates, it feels great, and you remember it. And this is one of those phrases for me. And it's in an interpretation of a Jewish text called the Talmud. And in it, in a discourse about witches, there is a phrase written, and it says, if one sees 2 women sitting at a crossroads, facing one another, they are engaged in witchcraft. If one sees 2 women sitting in a crossroads, they are engaged in witchcraft. And now y'all know, because we've been talking about witch archetypes for the last couple weeks, that at least for the purposes of this class together, what we mean when we're talking about witches is anybody who is grappling with, working with, reclaiming a sense of personal power. And I particularly love that in this particular sentence, the imagery is of a crossroads, of an intersection, because it brings us to the point I really want us to get to in this series, which is a crucial teaching titled The Middle Way. And this teaching, while always important, in truth, I feel is so important as we set ourselves up to make it through election season and the holidays and whatever else is to come in the days ahead. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the middle way tonight. And I want to get there by taking a little detour for a moment. I want to talk about a different teaching as an entry point in, and some of you will recognize this teaching. So it's titled The 8 Worldly Winds. And I did a whole episode on it a couple years ago. So you can go back and find the ways of wind, and you'll find this a deeper talk on this. So the 8 Worldly Winds is a Buddhist teaching. And in this teaching, they're talking about this idea of 8 winds that are sort of constantly blowing. And these 8 winds are praise and blame, gain, loss, success, failure, sorrow, and joy. And while there is loads of nuance and depth to be mined from those teachings in and of themselves, I want to just skim the surface and take sort of some overview points that feel really applicable for us tonight. The first of which is that these are taught as winds because we never know when the wind is going to change direction, right? We never know when the wind is going to change direction. We never know when praise will become blame, when gain will become loss, when joy will become sorrow, etc. Maybe even more importantly, we are not taught within this teaching to try your hardest, to work super hard, to be the best so that the wind blows in your favor. It's not part of the teaching because we don't control the wind. And lastly, the other overview piece I want us to remember is that we're not able to tease these winds apart, meaning one cannot exist without the others, right? We don't get praise if blame doesn't exist. We don't get joy if sorrow doesn't exist. We don't get gain if loss doesn't exist. And so rather than use this teaching as a way to grasp for something or to push something else away or to scramble and try really, really hard, the teaching is used to remind us that we're meant to learn how to exist in the middle of it all. We're meant to learn how to exist at the intersection of those eight worldly winds, or perhaps more appropriate for us tonight, the intersection of our daily lives. The middle way is taught as a way to remind us to embrace tension, embrace paradox, embrace sort of that hanging in the center before any resolution has happened. That moment when there's no clear answer, when we don't know who's won, we don't know who's lost. We're waiting for the chord at the end of the song. And rather than hold our breath and clench really hard and fight against whatever is going on inside our bodies while we wait, the middle way is inviting us to practice learning how to relax and open right in the crossroads, right in the middle of the intersection, that place where all paradoxes come together. And that is not a place out there. That is a place right here, right now, where each of us is sitting. There are so many intersections, so many moments, choices, experiences, feelings coming together in any individual moment for us to experience. This is perhaps a very high intensity intersection for a lot of us right now. So, for those of us in the live class here in the South, we're just days past Hurricane Helene blowing through. We're still witnessing the devastation unfolding. And for those of you like right here in Georgia with me, today we're dealing with the aftermath of some crazy fire at a chemical plant in Conyers, tens of thousands of people being evacuated because of it. And as I was hearing that unfold and witnessing what was happening in North Carolina and South Carolina and South Georgia and Florida, and also getting like the normal incoming emails for work and trying to get my kid to an appointment and then to school on time, that was a messy intersection. It was a lot. And I want to just like hit pause for one moment and say this because listeners, if you are listening to this episode and you are in the heart of an area impacted by Hurricane Helene, by that fire in Conyers, by something similar in your own community, you might decide to hit pause and not listen to this talk today, right? You might go back 2023, find the episode titled Meditation is a Band-Aid, and listen to that instead. Because when we're the hardest hit, right, when the hurricane has just ripped through, when the tornado has just blown through, we have to take care of our nervous system before we do anything else. And it's not that these deeper, more expansive talks are not true in those moments, but it's much harder for that to land, right? When our nervous system is on fire. And so when we're feeling beyond unstable or unsteady, we deal with the nervous system first. And then if, like me, we're sort of on the periphery, Atlanta got incredibly lucky. We're on the periphery. And so perhaps we have a little bit more space to really step into and hold this teaching of the middle way, which is so valuable for supporting us in any tumultuous moment, right? Because what it's telling us, what it's reminding us is we don't have to have the answer right this second. We don't have to fix it right away. We don't even have to know how it's going to get fixed in the future. But we do have to have the capacity to stay right here, to stay open, and to keep breathing deeply while we're doing so, right? Because it's easy in any of these moments to get sucked into the whirlwind around us. And the moment we do that, we've gotten pulled out of the intersection and down one of the many paths meeting at this intersectional point, right? We've gotten pulled onto a side path. And the work of our practice, the work of our meditation is to go, actually, I have to stay right here. And if you want to think about this through the lens of politics, I think it's a really easy place to like look for the middle road, actually, because it's so clear that we don't live in the middle, right? It's very clear for us. Like somebody on the opposite end of the political spectrum starts speaking, and you are like, firm no. I have to run in the opposite direction and get away from these words that are being said or spewed or yelled or written at me, right? And the work of the middle way is not to go, okay, sure, I love that. It's not to fight against it either, but it's simply to be able to say, right here in this moment, when that exists and this exists, how do I sit here? How do I stay open and let myself hear and let myself feel and find a way to tap into my own sense of steadiness and power? Because it's not about never doing anything, right? This is the place where it gets really easy to misinterpret meditation teachings. None of these teachings, the middle way included, are asking you to not have an opinion. None of these teachings are asking you not to act, not to support, to fight, to stand up for what you believe in. None of these teachings say that, right? What they're inviting you to do is to first get super steady, get super grounded, and open rather than close. Because a lot of times when we're prepared to fight for what we believe in, we are muscled up, we are armored, we are angry, and we want to yell. And the work of the middle way, the work of showing up as our witchy, powerful selves and sitting at the crossroads is to go, actually, right now, I am open. I am breathing fully. My feet are planted on the ground. And this is what I have to say. This is what I'm feeling. I brought just a couple quotes to read you guys about the middle way, just as thoughts or inspirations. And I want to start with a quote from Ajahn Sumedo, who's a Buddhist teacher who teaches on the middle way. And he's written, of course, we can always imagine more perfect conditions, how it should be ideally, how everyone else should behave. But it's not our task to create an ideal. It's our task to see how it is and to learn from the world as it is. For the awakening of the heart, conditions are always good enough. Jack Kornfield writes, in the middle way, we come to rest in the reality of the present moment, where all opposites exist. T.S. Eliot calls this the still point of the turning world, neither from nor towards, neither arrest nor movement, neither flesh nor fleshless. And so our work is not to create the ideal. It's not to fight against what is, but it is simply to continue practicing staying open, continuing to breathe, and awakening the heart. And so tonight, as we do our meditation practice together, you might imagine all of us sitting in that crossroads, facing one another, tapping into our own sense of power, and finding a way to open in the middle. Yeah. So why don't we do a practice? You'll take a moment to get comfortable. If you've been seated for a while, you might shift around, uncross your legs, cross them the other way. You will hear me get some sounds going in the background here. You'll allow your arms to rest in your lap. Perhaps your eyes will close. You might also choose just to take a soft gaze down towards the ground, whatever feels good to you. And together as a group here, why don't we start with a nice deep inhale in. Exhale out a sigh. And we'll do that once more, inhaling deeply. Exhaling out a sigh. And allowing your breath just to flow. And calling yourself into the practice, into the middle, as you silently say to yourself, now is my time to meditate. Now is my time to meditate. And as you say those words, you do the work of letting go a little bit. Perhaps you take time to consciously let go of everything that has already happened today. And maybe you take time to let go of all those things that you're going to do later. And for these few moments that we have together, we each invite ourselves just to sit down a little bit more. To really drop into the cushion or chair beneath you. Maybe to imagine yourself settling down right in the middle of the crossroads. You might feel like you can relax along the edges of your legs, across your seat or your belly. Softening the muscles through the chest and across your shoulders. Maybe letting your arms feel a little heavier. Letting go of any tightness in the hands. letting go of any gripping in the jaw or the inside of the cheeks. Gradually softening the skin around the eyes, the space behind the eyes. And finally, letting go across the forehead and behind the forehead. And over the course of the next few breaths, maybe feel yourself just starting to open. To let go of any of the hidden tension in the body. To let go of any of the hidden gripping in the mind. And gradually we begin to feel ourselves breathing. Without needing to change or force your breath. We simply feel the inhales as they move into the body. And we feel the exhales as they move out of the body. And our work in this evening's practice is simply to stay open. When thoughts arise, we simply allow them to be here. When sounds distract us, when feelings become uncomfortable, we simply do our best to feel breath in, to feel breath out. We continue to practice opening. Right here in the middle. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to get. Everything is right here, right now. Feeling yourself breathe as we settle into 10 minutes of silence. Feeling your breath here. Maybe gently noticing if there are parts of you that have tightened up or closed off. Take a moment once again just to practice opening. Practice softening. And as breath flows a little deeper down, let's revisit one more time the words of Ajahn Sumedo. Of course, we can always imagine more perfect conditions, how it should be ideally, how everyone else should behave. But it's not our task to create an ideal. It's our task to see how it is and to learn from the world as it is. For the awakening of the heart, conditions are always good enough. Take a moment to let that breath be really deep now. To wiggle into your fingers and your toes, reminding yourself of those edges. And together as a group here, let's take one final deep breath in together. Releasing out a sigh. And taking all the time you need to let go of that practice, to blink your eyes open when you're ready. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Our Mindful Nature. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or leaving me a review wherever you get your podcasts. It helps others to find the show, and let's face it, we could all use a few more meditators in our lives. Our Mindful Nature is recorded on Muskogee land and produced with the support of Brianna Nielsen. Deep gratitude is offered to acoustic ecologists Gordon Hempton and Nick McMahon for the use of their nature field recordings in many of these episodes. To join my live classes, ask questions, or learn about my teacher trainings, please visit merylarnett.com. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next week.